Welcome to Peaceful Bedtime Story for Adults. Let's begin. The Man Who Collected Goodbyes. There was once a man who lived in the back apartment of a quiet building, at the end of a long street. The kind of street people only walked down if they had somewhere specific to be. His name was Elliot. No one knew much about him. He worked in a secondhand bookstore. It was open only 4 days a week. He didn't advertise. The windows were dusty. The door creaked. And the bell above it rang a soft, tired chime. Still, people came. Not many. But the ones who did always left something behind. Not a scarf. Not a book. Not something you could touch. They left words. Final ones. Sometimes it was a whispered, "I guess this is it, then." Sometimes it was a sigh. Sometimes it was nothing but a long look at the door before walking out. And always, Elliot would quietly reach beneath the counter, pull out a slip of thick paper, and write down exactly what he'd heard. No one saw him do this. No one noticed. But he noticed everything. He didn't know when it started. Maybe it had always been this way. Maybe there was a moment he missed. A time when he stopped living in the middle of things, and started standing at the edges, where people leave. The slips of paper went into jars. The jars were labeled only with dates. Some were small. Just 1 or 2 goodbyes. Others were full. Tightly curled scrolls, packed neatly like dried herbs in glass. There was a whole shelf of them in his apartment. Alphabetized. Organized. Goodbyes from lovers. Goodbyes from children. Goodbyes no one said out loud. Goodbyes to cities. Goodbyes to selves. He didn't read them after he wrote them. That wasn't the point. He wasn't collecting them to remember. He was collecting them so someone did. Years passed. Quiet ones. Elliot aged gently. Lines appeared on his face, like notes scribbled in the margins of a book. His hands became slower. But his hearing stayed sharp. As if the world knew his work wasn't done. Some nights, he'd sit in his worn chair, the one by the lamp with the yellow shade, and listen to the jars. Not literally. They didn't speak. But he felt them there. The room hummed with all the weight people had shed in passing. It wasn't sad. Not exactly. Just full. Like the pause at the end of a song. One spring afternoon, a woman came into the shop. She was tall, tired, and carried herself like someone who had remembered something difficult on the walk over. She didn't say hello. She wandered. She touched the edges of book spines. Not reading the titles. Just tracing. After 20 minutes, she brought a single book to the counter. A weathered copy of The Little Prince. Elliot rang her up. She didn't make eye contact. Just held the book like it might float away. Then she said, "He used to read it to me. Out loud. Even when I was too old for that." Elliot paused. Not in surprise. Just in respect. She looked up. And for a moment, it felt like they both understood something they didn't need to say. Then she added, "He died in January. I never said goodbye." I don't think he knew I forgave him. Elliot didn't offer a comforting phrase. He just nodded. Slowly. Kindly. And when she left, he wrote. I don't think he knew I forgave him. He slipped the paper into a jar labeled Unfinished Goodbyes, 2025. That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. Not from sadness. He never carried other people's pain. He just held it for a while. But something about her voice had stayed with him. The shape of it. The way it hovered in the doorway. Before fading into the air. He went to the shelf. Looked at the jars. There were hundreds now. Maybe more. And for the first time in years, he wondered what they were all doing there. Not in a grand, philosophical way. Just, practically. What happens to a collection no one knows exists? The next morning, Elliot opened the shop an hour late. He took the sign from the window and replaced it with a new one. Goodbyes welcome. That was it. No explanation. People noticed. Not all at once. But enough. Some walked in and asked if it was a joke. He smiled, and said nothing. Some came in and sat in the little chair near the poetry shelf. And said things like, I never got to tell her I was proud of her. I let him leave without asking why. I miss who I used to be. And Elliot wrote every word down. Folded each slip carefully. And placed them in jars. One day, a man asked, What do you do with them all? Elliot said, I keep them safe. The man raised an eyebrow. Why? Elliot paused. Because people shouldn't have to carry them alone. Eventually, word spread. Quietly. The way certain truths do. People came from other neighborhoods. Some mailed letters, addressed only to the Goodbye bookshop. Somehow, they found him. He read each one. Wrote them down. Stored them in fresh jars with neat labels. A journalist once asked, Is this a project? Performance art? A brand? Elliot shook his head. It's listening, he said. That's all. On his last day. And no one knew it was his last. Elliot left a single note in the window. Not a goodbye. Just. The shelves are full. Thank you. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went. But the shop remained. The jars. The papers. The silence. People still came. Some read the notes. Some added their own. No one ever moved the jars. It felt wrong to. Eventually, a few regulars began tending the space. Quietly. Gently. They made new jars. Labeled them. Goodbyes to old versions of yourself. Goodbyes you weren't ready for. Goodbyes that were really beginnings. They didn't try to replace Elliot. They just carried his kindness forward. And the world, in its own small, quiet way, felt lighter. End.